All right. Hi, everybody. I hope you're all doing well and having a good Thursday so far. Um, just so you know, we are recording this session so that students who couldn't make it to the session today can watch it back later, as well as you if you want to go over things again. It's great to be able to have these sessions again. And I hope that you'll all find them useful. For those who are maybe new to these sessions, they kind of stand outside of the content that you're working on in your class. So we've got like over 30 different classes, all at very different stages of their studies. And so this kind of is a kind of a place where we can kind of share things that are maybe outside of a specific course. And hopefully learn together. So some things you might yet get to, and some things you might have done a little while ago, but it'll all be hopefully useful and interesting. And it's exciting to start off today with a design-focused one, which will apply to everyone. And so I'm going to hand over to Benita now, and she will take the rest of the session from here.
Thank you so much, MJ, for introducing me. I am going to share my screen, and I just want to let you guys know before I start to pop any questions you have in the chat, and I will get to them after the session. So just bear with me as I share my screen here. Okay. So I thought today would be like a 360 overall session about what we're going to experience in the next 2 years. And it's a good thing to start off with design, because I think it's an important aspect and sometimes get overlooked. But yeah, let's get kicking. So this is the first slide, obviously the cover page. I thought of starting with the design principles and the importance thereof. And I think when we started in the first week, a lot of you guys wasn't quite sure what those design principles are. And I thought, it's an important aspect to take in consideration while you design. There are lots of design principles. You get just start principles and get UX law principles. There are various laws of design, but I think these ones that I'm showing here are the most common used. So your form, balance, scale, it's all used to create harmony, and it all shapes the way you design things. So whether it's on the website or piece of paper, you always imply these principles, and you can't learn them overnight. You have to practice these in order to improve. And the way I normally look at it is color, shape, form, and how your elements flow on a page, whether that is now digital or print. It's the way your eye move, and you always want to keep your user engaged. And the first thing people normally do is they read from left to right. And the same thing kind of applies to design. You let the user flow with the design. But it's a nice thing to practice every day and have it as a cheat sheet next to you while you design. See how you can create contrast and what things you want to emphasize on your design. But read up on this. It's a good source to have. And then I thought about explaining the design system. Now there are various talks in the industry about design system or visual system. They're all pretty much the same, and you hear oftentimes about visual design and visual style guides. They all serve the same purpose basically, but design system basically comprise of all the elements that make up your design. So that can be the the color, typography, gradients, icons, patterns, and rules. And it's essentially like a brand Bible almost, or a design Bible. You have to adhere to the system. Otherwise, when you pass it on to an agency or a colleague or a next student, they might not know what the system is about actually. And it's a good way to keep structure within your design and not deviate from it actually. And we use it for everything. Basically, you can apply this to print and digital, but mostly digital when you hand off your designs to an external agency or someone next to you, you want to hand over files to them, you basically hand over this package design system for them. And it's a safe way to protect yourself when there are errors in the future or down the line when you create your website. There might be a case where the pattern wasn't applied correctly or someone else used the incorrect font. Then you just go back to the design system and you check if everything was used accurately. Bob Inigo, I see there's already a few questions in the chat. I'll get to that after with. Oh, this is one to move. Okay. Another important thing I would like to bring up, and it's quite something close to me, to my heart. Actually, I'm very passionate about accessibility, and I think it's the future. It's going to be very prominent in the future, and people might not understand it yet, but it's something that I think will be very useful in the future. So accessibility design is also an important aspect, and a lot of you guys always ask me, what do you think of this color, or what do you think of this typography? I always advise to go check the WCAG color checker on the website to see if your colors are accurate and if it complies to accessibility. It's a good thing to consider it because you want to design for all your users in mind. And as I mentioned, some industry are actually forcing laws into the practice where you have to comply with accessibility by laws. I'm not sure if it's here in South Africa yet, but I know abroad they are implementing laws to certain websites that you have to adhere to it. So it's a good thing to consider. And yes, just have a look at these links. You'll see there are some resources out there. Interesting to note, sometimes you design websites for various users, and I know people with dyslexia can only read certain typography or view certain colors. I know we have some members here who are not a fan of green, so I am aware that some people can see different or hear different things, and like for instance, myself, I prefer to have captions on videos, but that's also another thing to take into consideration. And then is a nice bold statement. It's accessibility and inclusive design issues should be covered when you do your user research. And I think it would be good if you could partner with someone who is a candidate, so someone who is visually impaired or has a hearing disability, and just ask them to view your website and see if they can navigate it. Someone with auditory or permanent or non-permanent abled or disabled disabilities, ask them to view your website and just see. Even if you don't practice it now, maybe in the future when you create work for yourself, you can always practice this in the near future when you want to. And then the big wireframes. I thought, let me talk a bit about wireframes since it was also a subject last week. So wireframe, you get essentially two. When I started, you got two forms of wireframes, low fidelity and high fidelity, but I see people are also using mid fidelity, which is like a bridge between high and low. Sometimes, wireframes are used as a skeleton, a basic outline. You draw it quickly on a piece of paper. If you want to get your ideas out on paper, you just draw quick, low fidelity wireframe on the page. If you have this idea in your head and you just need to get it out on there, you draw it on the paper and it's kind of a low fidelity. But then you start with a mid fidelity wireframe, which you can do there's lots of software out there. You can do it in Google or Balsamic or whichever one you choose. And then you get the high fidelity ones, which are more accurate or more precise in a way. And these wireframes give you a clear overview of what your website potentially could look like. And it's like a conceptual design, basically, or skeleton of your website or app or whatever you're going to create. And it's a nice way to interact with your users and ask UX questions, like how will the users engage with it? What will they click? Where will they be taken to? And how will they react to this? And it's a good time to ask questions as well. And then prototyping. I actually didn't do a prototype for this session, but I will. Prototyping is also very important. Normally it happens after the wireframing, or you do your mock-ups and then your prototypings. And we build prototypes to test for users and present the actual files to the agency or stakeholders or your clients, or whoever you're going to present to. It's a good way for them to see what it's going to look like and how it's going to flow. Because sometimes people don't know what it's going to look like or where does it click to. So it's a good design or interactive design for them to see how your website or app is going to flow and how it will navigate. It's also a good idea to test on your users when you do the prototypes. And then I thought, let me carry on with grids. I see grid was a hot topic last week. I've been having a lot of DMs about grids. And I think, at the end of the day, grids are just a set of rules and guidelines for you to use for your content on your website or print work or whatever. Now, grids originated with a print. When people lay out magazines, they normally use grids and they compose certain content blocks on there, and essentially grids are used in everything. You can use it in print and digital, but now predominantly I think in the digital world there are a lot of grids, because our screen sizes change so rapidly. Nowadays you have to design for desktop and mobile, and who knows, maybe, I don't know, AR will come in the future. But grids are actually a nice playground for you to play. And it's essentially a guide where you can place your copy and your text and your images. And it's also a nice way to see how your design is going to look like. And I'm trying to encourage you all not to be restricted with grids, although you can stay within the 12 columns grid or the modular grid, whichever way, as long as you play around within those systems. And you can actually go, wow, there are an insurmountable possibilities, just as long as you don't break the internet, as they say. But essentially how I would go about is designing in a 12-column block, and then always mobile. For mobile, I'll have a 2-column or 4-column block. It depends on what the design is. And then I'll just play around and see and look at something until I'm happy with it. But I'm going to show you a live preview of what I did. I just want to see. I don't think I added another page after this. No, I'm just going to share another screen. Let me quickly have a look at the questions while I'm on here. How long do these typically? 30 minutes? Yep. Thank you, MJ, for answering that. Let me share my real design times. Guys, don't get a fright here. I am a messy designer, so excuse the screens. So I thought, let me do a quick tutorial to show you how I would go about designing website. I did this quickly. This is like a Photoshop image that I use where I just literally throw things on there and decide, okay, what's the layout going to look like? Where's what going to sit? And will the image be there, or will there be a big header image with copy underneath it, or will the copy be on top of the image? And as designers, we tend to play around. I'm a very perfectionist. Sometimes I will sit hours and hours with a homepage just to decide, okay, what looks more relevant or what looks accurate. But essentially, for me, this still feels a bit too tight and too restricted. I think I can still play around a bit, but like I said, that was a quick one. It's not, like breaking the grid, going wild. But for this exercise, I decided to design a normal 1920 by 1080. And I also, for Ollie, did a quick bootstrap 1280 1024. This is a four grid for bootstrap. Now, if you look at the two, you can see the bootstrap one is quite more condensed and it doesn't have a wide gutter, but the 1920 has a wide gutter, and you can determine that explicitly for this exercise. I made the gutter a bit wider here so that I can play around with the open space on the left. But for the bootstrap one, I kept it very narrow just to show you what the difference would look like. So you can see there's not a lot of breathing spaces on the edges, but that it's all dependent on the screen. And you can see the terrible typography here. Let me take that away. So, let me just do that. So what I did here, and forgive me, I'm going to do a live session. Don't judge me. But essentially, I've created my H1 here. And sometimes I like to play around with the typography. And I see you guys tend to stick with Arial or the computer, the normal software font that we see all the time, Arial or Roboto or whatever. But I also do encourage you guys to play around a bit more with your typography, especially, if it's something new. Try to use different fonts. For this one, I used Inter, and I actually realized now that my Figma didn't share font foundries that I've created, but I'll share with you in the end. But for this case, I would, maybe I decide I want to make the title a bit smaller, or I want to increase the font or make the heading a bit wider. This is 94, I think, or 96. Maybe it becomes 100. In a case like this, let me just switch off my grid so you guys can see a bit better. Now that I've shown you the guides, why is it not hiding? Let me see. Oh, I'm in EXT, no wonder. Anyway, I'm gonna hide it just now. Remove my screen here. Okay, well, I can't see actually. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it as it is, but it basically gives you the oh, there we go. Sorry. It basically gives you a nice overview of what it will look like. So in the case of this header image, you can see I've created hierarchy with the typography being the focus point and the image also being large, but I don't want to place the type there, or I don't want to place it at the top there, I've explicitly put it on the left so that it can flow nice and your eye moves quite nicely from the copy to the right. Now in this case, I realized I added opacity because it would be difficult to read on the leaves here. And in a case like this, I'll also add a bit of drop shadow underneath it. I've also added a tiny call to action, explore more, but I think maybe I'll increase that, even though that is 16. Maybe I'll make it 18. My general assumption is that for me, as someone who looks at typography, and I know there's been various talks, body copy ought to be 16. Some people make body copy 16 or 18 or subheadings 24. I'm actually comfortable of keeping my body copy at 18, but that is because sometimes I also struggle to see smaller text. So for all my development, I keep it at 18, but you can use the material, Google material guidelines. It's just, sometimes you can use whatever size you want, which is comfortable for your eyes optically. For me as a user, I prefer to use 18. But then I've got your, so you've got your H1, H2, H3, and then your body copy. I'm just showing you the various styles and layouts. And in the case of using the grid here, you can see I've played around. I didn't keep it all underneath each other clean like this. You can actually overlap the images and put copy over the image. I know it doesn't look very well, but it's just to show you an example of how the copy would look over an image, and a small call to action button there. I've also kept an about us section here on the left. And I see sometimes people add like titles on the side here, just for, breaking the categories almost. I'm not sure how it will get coded, but I think you can code it. In the About Me section, I normally, I place it here just so it's a nice break here within this section, and a small planted tree button there, rounded corners. Obviously the button is a bit light, but just to show an example, you can make it rounded corner or rectangle, whichever one you are comfortable with. I know a lot of people prefer the rounded corners because it's kind of trendy, but it's up to you. You can decide if you want to keep it rectangle, rounded corners. And for this section, I'm just showing you a little bit of layout options. So obviously I added the image here to show you how it will overlap within the space. But if you look at this, the way it's been laid out, it's just a different font treatment. You've got your H2 subheading there, which is bolded, and your copy quite big there. And obviously your smaller body copy. Let me just check, it is 18. 18 is nice for me. And you can always add a break there with a line. So just a nice way to show you almost how you can design something, and that you're not restricted to the layout per se, as long as it fits your target audience and your user. But it's just an example to show you how you could design this. For instance, if I had now for this particular image, if I wanted to place it there in the middle, I can, because I know my typography will be here on the left. And when everything's stacked, it will obviously for mobile be stacked underneath each other, but you can code it, and for mobile, you won't have the copy on top of the image, it will be below it because of the way it is coded, and your other images will obviously be placed underneath. So if I wanted to make this a bit different, what I'll do is I'll add copy there, underneath each other there, maybe. As long as you get some sense of harmony. I don't have my grid on now, but I'm just showing you guys live here now. So say for instance, I want to, place it the text here with the image here, and immediately it gives you another scenario of what something could look like. And obviously when it's for mobile, the image will be at the top and the text will follow below because they will stack. And even though this is 12 column grid, you can always go a bit further. You could always break it a bit, take it further, or place it there, or have the 3 columns there, 2 column here, another 2 column here, maybe 1 column there, or have one big image in the center here if you want to add, if you want to say, okay, I want to enlarge my image up to the edge of the grid, you can. And you have a nice image there, but it's create like a sense of balance almost. It creates a nice contrast, and then you have your copy here. Just showing briefly what it looks like if you were to so immediately this is almost like a creates a nice dynamic almost. I'm just going to put it there just for argument's sake. But immediately this is like a 2 column grid, and it flows nice because the image breaks the copy a bit, and yeah, it almost breaks it as well. So yeah, you can have a 1 column within a 12 column, so you're not restricted. You can have 1 image or 3 text blocks, 3 images. Yes, let me just see if I can quickly find that other Figma files that I wanted to share with you guys, the typography. Oh, here we go. I think I didn't show you this. Okay, a style guide is a set of rules how your brand should be displayed. Yeah, it's almost the same as the design system, but more visually. And it's based on the images, the copy, the typography, the tone, and when people use photography, they actually show you the do's and don'ts of typography and images. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to share with you guys is type Foundries that you can find on the internet. My favorite is Foundries. They're all free, and beautifulwebtype.com. Go have a look around and try to use some nice fonts in your design, guys. Don't stick to Arial, Roboto, or all the other sans serif Times New Roman's one. There are nice fonts out there that you can use for your projects. Another one I like is if you see a font that you like, but you're not sure what kind of font it is, you can always look at fontsinuse.com. Unfortunately, some of these fonts you have to purchase, and we know how expensive they are. But it's also a nice place to see how people use typography as well. For instance, this one, they've combined 2 sets of fonts, so a serif and a sans serif. And that way you kind of create a nice visual component with typography as well, a nice treatment on its own. Typography can be a nice visual design system on its own. So you can create like a strong image with the use of just typography. It's all up to you how you combine them and what sort of letter types you use. And you can obviously use colors as well. I think that was that, Joe. The only slide that I've missed was the type Foundries and the style guide. There we go. Let me see if there are any questions. Is Arial still okay to use, or has it become something designers frown upon? It is something designers frown upon. Well, it's so let me rather say it's, Henry, it is more like a bygone era. People don't use Arial. If you want to use system fonts, I would rather use the browser system fonts. Like I know Google use Roberto. I can't remember what Microsoft or Google, Apple use. I think they use SF. So they've got their own personal one. ISO has their own personal one. Could you collect all resources mentioned here in a file? You are able to access the links as they are. I will make sure they are applicable for you to open in a new file or in a new tab. You have 3 different font sizes when the Adobe XD body. And there are some special rule between these 3 sizes. For example, golden ratio. It's more experimentation. See, look good. Yes, my go-to or my preferred way of font, I normally use 2 to 3 font and 2 to 3 different sizes. So I normally optically judge or look at the screen and determine based on the screen size or what it's all based on what the other components on the screen is, before I can see how the typography and the sizes will be used. But as I mentioned before, it's up to you. The Google material has a set of font rules and font sizes. You can use those. For me personally, I use 1896 or 94 for H2, 48 for H3. It all depends on you, and it all depends on the design and your users, basically. But the golden rule, the golden rule is it's a good thing to follow, but it's as long as you create some sense of space around your element. So make sure your eyes, if you have an image on the left, make sure the right side of your page is either clean for your eye to focus on something that is important. And another thing I want to mention is always place your important information at the top and your least important information at the bottom. And when you design, place your how can you say it, not your important designs, but the most visual component of your design in the center of the website. That's how I normally do that. Either the top, center, and maybe keep some little information at the bottom. Don't, because you never know when your user will scroll down to the bottom, and it also depends on the length of the pair. Helvetica News, good. Comic Sans, great. Haha. There are so many fonts out there. It feels almost overwhelming. What would be your about? BBC Explore Typography Universe. Great. I would say have a look at those for Henry. I would say have a look at those type foundries, Fonts in Use and Font Share. Stick to start with 3 first, and until you're comfortable to explore more, try font pairings like that Font Joy, see what works for you. Ideally, it's best to always pair a sans serif and a serif with each other, bold and regular, just to create some form of contrast. You don't want to keep everything the same height or the same weight. It's nice to create a sense of contrast between bold and regular. But my tip would be to stick to 2 to 3, serif and sans serif, and see how you can improve on those first until you're comfortable to add more. But also be mindful to use fonts that are accessible. So I know some users, like dyslexia people, they can't read certain fonts, and I think they use Space Mono, if I'm not mistaken. But test it out with them. It all depends on the user. But if you want something decorative, maybe go for 2 to 3. The best way you're going to get good at typography is to practice it and to train your eye to see the different weights and the shape of it. And you'll just read up on typography books. It's a good way to practice. Okay, guys, if anyone has any more questions, they are welcome to pop it in the chat or in our Discord Teams chat if you want to. I think I have shared enough for today. I hope it was so useful for you guys. And if you have any other questions, if you want to see how I design in real time, you're more than welcome to schedule a call with me. If you want to show me your work, drop me a mail or drop me a DM and I will happily assist. I think, MJ, I don't know if you want to conclude or okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Benita. That was great. That's very interesting. And yeah, it's great to see how you work and taking us through all those different elements of design. So yeah, that was much appreciated. I will share the recording, and if you, Benita, if you could just share those links for a few of those font sites, that'd be great as well. I think that the students would appreciate that. All right, we'll be back next week, and we'll come up with a topic to cover there. So yeah, we'll see you next week for another one of these sessions. Well, thanks a lot, Benita. Right, bye everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.